Hey, everybody, it's Joe Solari with the Business of Writing, and we've got another session today with my good buddy here, Craig Martelle. How you doing, Craig?
Oh, doing great. Coming to you live from the subarctic. It's 5:30 my time, and it's already daylight outside. So we've swung from the dark, and cold to daylight, and it hasn't been. The low has been above freezing for the last week now. So we're under
Wow.
major meltage.
Get out your wave runner, huh?
Yeah. My rhubarb popped out. The snow was still. It popped out even though there was snow still on it. So my rhubarb is going great.
Yeah, rhubarb don't care about nothing, right? It's
It grows, and the
yeah,
trees all have buds, so we're starting to get some pollen. But generally, we still have a foot and a half of snow on the ground. That'll be gone another week like this. That'll mostly be gone.
yeah. I think that was one of the things that was most shocking to me when I was in Alaska in the summer was like how big and fast things grow with all that sunlight. You don't think about like that when even though it's a
Yeah,
short
big
growing
and
season, they
fast.
get a lot. Yeah, it really grows. That's the really grows fast. I mean, rhubarb
Yep.
really grows, but like that, yeah. So yeah, I wanted to get together again and give folks an update about how things are going with you, and just have a general state of the union with 20 books and things that we're seeing in the book world as far as trends and whatnot. So what's been going on with you?
Well, the first quarter review, first quarter was absolutely magnificent, huge. It's the end of April. Well, actually, by the beginning of April, I had already pulled in 120 grand of revenue. So it's been a very good first quarter, setting me up for the biggest year ever. Leveraging the backlist as well as getting new titles that are hitting very solidly, home runs on almost everything new that I'm putting out, and that's great to see. It's given me a lot extra titles and series in order to leverage that first in series and promote, conduct a couple of promotions a month, and keep pushing forward to get my books into people's hands in a positive way during this period of time. I mean, there's transition and people getting out of lockdowns and those things and getting back to normal. And normal is still people reading books, so they
Mm-hmm.
can read more books than we can write, and that's a good thing. I've got an extensive backlist, so if I can get them into one series and then guide them strategically to, oh, if you like this series, you should probably give this a try and see if you like it, and guide them from one series to the next, to keep them in my backlist, and keep them reading. So that has gone very, very well. We've got this year 2 conferences. We've got 20 Book Spain coming up June 4th and 5th in Madrid. And that is all set up and locked in. All I have to do now is just coordinate, make sure the guest speakers are aligned and ready to deliver the presentations. Otherwise, it's the home stretch now. All the contracts are signed, paid, everything is ready to deliver. And then, of course, 20 Books Vegas. It's going to be the biggest one ever. Those I was talking with the hotel yesterday, and that's the kind of things we do. We've got the banquet event orders already in order to stay well ahead and make
Mm.
sure that we get everything we want and that is set up and good to go well before we get there, and not jumping through our butts at the last minute trying to coordinate things.
Yeah, I know that a conference of that size, that on its own is a full time job. It's just a
Yeah,
lot, lot of
that's I
lot of
write
moving parts.
I write part time now. My full time job that I don't get paid for is doing the conferences. But
Mm.
the part time that I do write, it makes well more than full time money. So,
Mm.
but my writing part time at this point is giving me. I'm shooting for 2,000 words a day. That's my production schedule for the year. If I get the 2,000, I'm good. I can deliver all my books early, and if I get a little extra because of a good scene, it's rolling, things like that, then I'll be well ahead of the power curve in
Mm.
delivering those titles. Because for me, nothing sells the last book like the next book, and keeping those titles rolling, keeping the readers interested, giving them a little bit better books each time. Uh, makes fans into super fans.
Yeah. Well, one thing I wanted to touch on that you mentioned there is, when you see what's happened with the pandemic and how it impacted a lot of author businesses, in looking at the number of authors that I've seen, clients as well as others that have asked us to look at their business, it's obvious that there was, this period where there was some really great growth for authors, right? So you go way back in time when the pandemic first came at us. My first initial reaction is like, we got to batten down the hatches and be prepared for a 20% drop in sales. So we looked at like everybody's business with that kind of loss to make sure that everything was going to be okay. Joyously, at least for our businesses, it went the other way, right? People were in some cases doubling their sales, and now we're seeing this drop off. And what I would caution people to think about is, don't think about trying to maintain those levels of sales. Like, don't keep thinking you're going to go find more customers. You have those customers. They're not customers per se, but they're prospects on your list, right? If you collected those names. So think about how you can go in and nurture the people that found you during the pandemic and remind them that, hey, you're still around and there's still good stuff to read. Before we jumped down, we were talking about surveying reader list, and the best I've ever seen is about 50% in a survey of people saying that they've read everything that an author's written, right? So that means you have this customer you've already got in there. You can basically sell them for free because you've got them in a list. Do you have anything in your marketing that's doing that? Most authors don't. They're only worried about new customers, not existing customers.
Yeah. Oh, I work my existing customers. I've got a giveaway going right now of cool stuff because I'm trying to downsize my neat stuff that I've collected over the years. And so I do giveaways every couple of weeks, and I push it to my list, even though it's to ostensibly grab new readers. So if any of my people share it, because then they get extra entries through King Sumo, then I get the new readers. I keep the old readers happy because I think everybody who's won so far has been an old reader. I haven't had a new entrant win, and it's King Sumo. It's random, but the old readers are the ones who put in enough times that they might have 27, 40 entries in the King Sumo over 2 weeks. But it's got to be a balance. You keep marketing to the old readers, because just that. I think last survey, I might have had 3% or 4% who read everything I wrote. And that's extremely limited. So it's all opportunity. So that's opportunity, because I can send them a note and say, hey, here's this. And I have their eyeballs for a few seconds at least. And can I set that hook and get them into the next book or the next series?
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I've been kind of obsessing about lately is this Dr. David Santola that wrote the book How Behavior Spreads, and I've used a lot of his research in my book Advantage. He talked about how the kind of network you have to build to spread behavior. But I recently saw some more updated stuff that he's done, and he talks about when they did that research and they were going through their peer review, the question was asked, what does this have to do with commitment, right? And so he shows this slide, and he talks about how the longer it takes somebody to adopt a behavior, the more committed they become, right? So if you think about that, your early adopters of anything, say reading your book, they're early adopters. They're going to go early adopt something else next. So they're going to go run off, and they're most likely aren't going to stick around, right? That's their nature. The people that are a little more cautious and take more time to adopt are 4 times more likely to keep doing that behavior over again. So that means time is a function of this thing, right? Like giving people the time to get those touches, to get to trust you, and then adopt, they're going to be better customers and stick around longer. So again, do you have the systems in place to do that automatically over time? Right. And like what you're talking about is one of those systems. You can't just do that once. You have to keep doing it and seeing, oh yeah, every time Craig does a launch, there's just a celebration and we do this fun stuff. And I got a chance to win, swag or some old junk from his house, whatever it is. Right.
Yep. Neat stuff.
Yeah. That's all, a lot of times I think in the author community, we forget how we like to be treated as customers and do that. Right. A perfect example is the sweatshirt you have on.
Rush, baby. You bet. And there'll be people who say, "Oh, Rush, I haven't listened to them for a while. Let me crank up some Rush." And if you do it on Spotify, Rush gets paid.
Yeah.
It's a little bit, but you keep listening to them. You listen to 100 songs, Rush gets money.
Yeah, and as somebody that grew up when that band was like at its peak, you and I, we like not everybody was into Rush. That was they were probably some of the earliest people that were like, hey, these are our fans. This is what it's about, right? You come to the show, You're waiting for the Neil Peart drum solo, all that stuff that's maybe, I'm trying to think, it may be the band I've seen the most, right? Because also they toured a lot. Like that's how they were making money, right? And understanding how you build a community like that, right? Probably the only, the ones that really did it well was the Grateful Dead, right?
Yeah.
Where that became like people's lifestyle. They were driving around following
the
that
brand. Yep. Having a Dead sticker on your Volkswagen camper van.
Yeah. Or now your Mercedes.
That's right.
Times have changed, right? And oh, by the way, they weren't driving from concert to concert to bus. They flew with private jets.
Yep. And it worked. So
those are some rich hippies.
The branding is important. Living up to your brand and maintaining consistency over time. For me, we were talking before we went live here about I write escape fiction. I will keep writing escape fiction, and that's what my fans are here for. So as far as the servant leadership, I'm not dictating to my fans, here's what you need to read. I'm giving them what they want to read because they're my fans because of that. So yes, I am giving them what they want with what I want to write. So it's that Venn diagram overlap of what sells and what I like to write. So I'll keep giving them that, and I will try little things here and there and see how it works, and keep moving forward and keep writing in a way that keeps me happy without being a burden, and keeps the fans happy, keeps them coming back. So my platform keeps getting bigger and bigger as I keep moving forward.
Yeah, I'm pretty adamant in my feelings about that. Like, we're really in an amazing time where if you want to write a book about anything, you have the ability to do it. Like, there's nothing that can stop you from writing what you think might be the next great American novel. You can do it for free. There's no gatekeepers at all. But if your intention is to make money, well, now that's a different game, right? Because you're asking the market to reward you. The market is going to choose what's worthy and what isn't. And guess what, guys? It's not what you might think it is, right? And people can bitch and moan about they think that, these books are banal or they're not this, or, you know what? People have pretty complicated lives and they want escape, right?
They want another Spider-Man movie.
Yeah. Like,
they want another Batman movie. Why does Hollywood keep remaking? Because they've got a set audience that's going to come and watch those films. Now, I'm not going to keep writing the same book, but they're going to be similar.
Well, that's the magic, right? When it's about 70% similar and 30%, a surprise, right? That's what people want, is they want to have accessibility, but they also want to have something new and unique. It's like, how can there be a multi-billion-dollar romance industry. Like, we all know how the book's going to end. If it doesn't end with a happily ever after, like, you're not going to sell that book. But that's not the point. The point is that if you can put enough of that 30% in, there's always going to be people that want to do that they're going to read a book a day.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
and romance does it better than anybody else in establishing here's how the relations, here's the conversations, enemies to friends, fairly established, well-established tropes. And there's a lot of books out there. Sci-fi, I mean, I like 60s and 70s sci-fi. I like the old masters and those themes, and I write along those lines with some modern terminology and wording and good dialogue that keeps people coming back. So it's you have to write a great book, or you have to write a good book in a great way, and it's got to be the same but different. And you keep those things in mind, and you will be able to deliver to your audience knowing that the audience is already there. You can't just write a book and say, hey, this is my inspired novel, and think that the audience will come to you. It doesn't work that way.
No. I do think we can point at some examples in the marketplace of folks that have over time created something new, but a lot of where I've seen that be successful is they've started with a good reference point, and over time, as they've matured and kind of found their voice and developed this new thing, the audience came along with them, right? I was on a Clubhouse room the other day, and there was this group that was analyzing a contemporary romance author that's really kind of changed some things, and it was almost like a MBA case study. Like, what can I pull out of this to apply to something else? Where it's like, no, you're missing the point. Is like that took 7 years to get to that point. It was 7 years of audience building and trying things out and people understanding the writing voice. And then all of a sudden it took off, right? It was that what I talked about earlier, those touches and getting the more resistant audience to adopt and adapt. And then that built and built and built and took off. You can't rush that. Well, what people hate to hear as authors is that means you got to write more books.
And I mean, traditional publishing has a kind of a bloated business model with offset printing, mass quantities, storage, warehousing, distribution, and getting them in stores, and then getting mass returns. And TradPub are not idiots. They made billions every year and are still making billions. And what they did right was they did the market research, and then they had the audience. They had the books that would deliver to that market research. So as indies, these are the good lessons you can take away from TradPub is you do your market research first. If you're just going to write your passion project first and then get disappointed because it doesn't sell, that's okay. That's great. Enjoy. You've written a book, something that most people say they're going to write a book. Don't. You've written a book, but if you want to make money, and this is the change in perception you put on your business hat, then you've got to do the market research first. For me, I read thousands of sci-fi books. I'm like, okay, here are books that are missing, so I'm going to write them, and I have, and I keep writing them, and they're selling just fine, and I'm building an audience. But I've written a couple. Hey, I like this idea. It's off. It's different, and written those. And guess what? Didn't sell because my audience is not that audience. And this is how TradPub works. Hey, why do they reject these books? Because they don't think they're going to fit for this very narrow audience that they know they have. And narrow audience, it might be 250,000 readers, but they know that it's just outside what they like, and they're not going to take that risk and pay all these salaries of people for a book that's not going to sell. So as an indie, take those good lessons away, do your market research first, understand, hey, here are books that are good, read them, understand what those tropes are, the same part, and then understand what's missing, the different part, weld those together into a great story, and then cast it into this ready-made audience, which is what genre is.
Yeah. Well, and we're, fortunately, because of technology changes, there is a different business model in the sense of, there was a time that you and I can remember where the most awesome experience there was to go into a big box Barnes and Noble and sit with a cup of coffee and browse through books. And in my case, when I would do that, that was my biggest exposure to titles that I could have ever seen outside of like a major city library, right?
Yeah.
That thing maybe had 250,000 titles in it. Maybe, right? And what the magic of Amazon in that long tail is that they could show you all these other titles and they could show you the relationship that these books have to each other and not have to stock them. In the early days, Amazon was drop shipping like people drop ship through them now, right? They would put the title up, right? And so that's what made it possible for us to go find these niches and survive in them, is because of that model. And I think that, when you look at something like, we both know Dakota Kraut, who's doing very, very well in a genre that didn't exist 10 years ago, right? And that's a genre that there's a lot of people that are in and are doing well, right? Science fiction romance wouldn't have gotten published. We know there's a lot of people that make a lot of money of aliens falling in love, a lot of money, right? Like, so that's the cool thing, is the opportunity set for authors. I think that, don't think about that in the same vein as like going and writing, your passion project. There's spots that readers will come to and you can make money in that are smaller than something like contemporary romance, if you can write to that niche, right? And every one of those niches has their own little things. Like, how many people do you know have tried to go into lit RPG and have their asses handed to them? Right? Like,
yep. You got to know it. You can't just say, "Oh, I can write," and not know what lit RPG really means. Exactly.
Like, oh yeah, it's so much money, I'm going to go write it. And then you put the book out, you put all that effort in, like getting 2-starred and people just destroying you. And it's like, oh, wow. Not only is this audience really fanatical, like they have expectations that if they're not met, they get out their pitchforks.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So I think that, to your point, that understanding what the audience wants in the market is so, so important. And while you don't have the team that a traditional publisher has, what you do have is agility, right? You have the ability to react to a market faster than they can.
I do have a good team. I have a team that's comparable and actually bigger. I've got four trad pub titles, and the team I have now is bigger and better than what I had going through the trad system, because I had an editor, and I think I only had one proofreader after that. Here now I've got 4 beta readers. I have an editor, and I might have 15 to 20 proofreaders. So no arcs. And my traditional publisher, they live for arcs. So I sent a lot of arcs. Yeah, I got a bunch of reviews right away. But you know what? On my current stuff, because I've never done arcs, I get a bunch of reviews right away because I ask some people. And my readership understand and expects that, and they're great. I love my readers, and I do my best to keep delivering for them.
Yeah, I think that I know when you're first getting started, that becomes a big focus, is like getting reviews and that. But like when you get at your level and folks that I'm working with, like they're not worrying about reviews. They just come,
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I think that is there anything else kind of you've seen that, like, you're looking into 2022, like business environment wise, that got you concerned? Or
there's a certain amount of pay to play, and this is always a concern for new authors. However, because of communities of authors like 20 Books to 50K, which we should go over 60,000 members within the next week or so. Michael and I are going live on Saturday, May 7th to do some giveaways and stuff to thank everybody and recognize and celebrate 60,000 members. What I see is, I know Google Play Books just came out with a beta program for their audiobooks. The head of Google Play Books sent me an email yesterday asking, "Hey, could you share this with 20 books?" And I did this morning. So a audiobook auto narration. So it's technology driven and not a human driven. And I know Audible says we're not going to do any of that. It has to be a human narrator, but there's a lot of other places out there who will accept those. So we'll see if that bears fruit, because the technology is only going to get better over time. And is it going to be off-putting enough to drive people away? Right now, the beta program for Google Play Books is free. So you can have a book that you have no intention of making an audiobook, have it done for free, send it out to Google Play Books. So it's almost like free money. It's not creating new content. Creating new content is always a 1 month, 2 month, 4 month effort in writing a new book, and then going through all the process of cover, editing, proofreading, all of those that have costs. And here it's like, okay, I can get a new product without new content. And so I might try a few books in there. I've got a few books that I have no business being audiobooks, and see how they work out. But pay to play for advertising, getting that book out there and getting it in the right hands, that will continue to be a challenge. But half of my marketing dollars go to building lists. So because then that's people you control and people you can deliver a very targeted message to. So I spend a lot of my money on building my list and bringing new readers. And then the other half is this smattering of ads on first in series, on some big first in series. I don't advertise all my books. I've got auto ads on all my books, but I don't advertise all of them. I really push the first in series, upping my promotion game, running more promotions, targeted promotions. Once again, that's to get the book into the right readers' hands and bring them on board. So I do at least 2 a month, and some months might be 5, trying to get those and German titles, translations. I've got 4 books in German right now. Actually, more than that, because I've got another series with LNBPN, and they're translating that into German, and it's already been fairly well received. We're doing some other type translations into Germany. I've just signed a contract, or I should get that contract today, with another company to put some other titles into German, and we'll see how those work. So the market is huge out there, and there's a benefit of reaching new audiences without having to create new product. Putting on your business hat, how long does it take you to write a book and then make that book presentable to publish? And some people that's 3 months, some people it's a month, other people it's a year. Imagine if you can get all these new products without having to write a new book. So instead of you publish one book, you've got one product. You publish one book and you've got 4 products or 6. And those all become their own independent revenue streams. So audiobook, I see that growing, just continue to grow, especially as people get back on the road. Even though it grew over the last 2 years, which was bizarre to me, we'll see audiobooks continue to grow, maybe not at the meteoric rate of just a couple of years ago, but they will continue to grow. Translations, as they become easier to do into all the markets, and then the challenges that come with those markets. And of course, the cost that comes into advertising in Germany and France and Spain, in Colombia, wherever you might get your books.
Yeah, I part of what our delay is we and us getting together again for this podcast is I have year end with all of our clients, and we have also planning, and one of the big things is going through the different. It's almost genre related, like where should you deploy your money, right? So, we had one client where she's doing very, very well, but you only got so much money, and you have to have the right growth rate. And so the strategic decision was invest all of your money in translations And because your audiobooks take a bit longer to pay off and it's not really like other genres, go work with a publisher on that. Go get somebody else to do that, so you don't have to deploy the capital, right? Because in her case, she's getting like 3 times her money back in 6 weeks on a translation. So like, I'll do that all day long, right? Like, just get that's one where you would go borrow money to do if you could, right? Like, and you know that's a fixed window, right? You're going to go through your backlist, and then you're kind of done. There's this opportunity right now where people are kind of rushing in there. This is the time, if you can do it, you want to do it, because you're going to get those KU bonuses, and you're going to do the stuff that's really going to set you your kind of had when you maybe started your career, right? Because it's not just to your point. You're absolutely right. To your point, you're creating these other revenue streams. But I think with things like translation and audio, what gets lost sometimes is it's actually really low cost new customer development, right? Because you don't have any German speaking customers right now. You go translate, now you do. Those are new customers. You never had them before. That's a whole new audience. So that's the other part of this thing that gets kind of lost is that rather than taking that money and spending it on finding new English speaking customers with advertising dollars, is that money better spent going into translation, because that is a new customer and it's a new product and it's a whole new, leg of your revenue stream. So, that becomes another way maybe some authors aren't necessarily thinking. It's like, oh, I can't afford to do it. Are you spending a lot of money on ads? Maybe you cut that budget in half right now and deploy that into that asset, whichever one makes more sense for you, whether it's audio or translations.
Well, and cash flow. Like you mentioned, if your audiobooks, and you have to understand, this is where you have to understand your business. If you keep pushing audio and they're not getting their money back, now you've got a negative cash flow and a negative return. Whereas if you could translate and you see that you're getting a positive turn, do more of what's working. That's always the right business model, is do more of what works.
And because I can see across genres, it's like it's very different, right? Like there are some genres where even if you're massively successful, you're not going to sell the same kind of audiobook sales as you would in another genre, because the audience, and the most obvious one is the difference between science fiction and romance. Romance readers like to read. Like that's the market, right? It's not to say there isn't ones that'll listen to audio. Yes, there are, but most readers in that are very fast readers. They can't sit around and wait for some guy with a smoky voice to talk to narrate a book. Science fiction, a lot of its audience, it's there. Those guys weren't even reading when they were supposed to be reading in high school. They love sci-fi. Yeah. They'll go watch movies. They love the idea that they can sit in their car and listen to a book, but they're never going to read. So hire a great narrator and get that new market.
And like you said, sometimes you can bid those out. Like I have contracts with Tantor and Dreamscape and even Findaway with books, because hey, they'll be good as audiobooks, but I just don't want to invest in that right now. And we just let a new contract with Tantor on the subsequent 3 books in my one series, because the first 3 books, the first book got a sorry about that. Got a call. Michael Anderley, give me a call. So I had the first 3 books were successful. I got a Kindle, a Audible deal of the day on that first book, and sold thousands of copies got all the way up to number 4 overall in the Amazon store as the audiobook, competing with books and trad and everything. So a lot of copies moved, and it stayed high in the rankings, and in books 2 and 3 in audio. So we got a new contract from Tantor for the next few books. And actually, that just hit my bank account yesterday. So, and they're paying me. Okay, now I'm getting a lower revenue, but I wouldn't have gotten the deal of the day without the publisher submitting and getting that approved through Audible, because I don't think indies and just ACX folks have as easy an access to get that deal of the day. And I don't know how to do it. I just know it popped up because the publisher, Tantor, was able to submit and then got it. Because all they do is they submit a list, and then Audible just picks.
Yeah. I know they've got an easier shot at it to do that. I know some other folks that have gotten them, and if you look, it's typically more through the publishers or distributors that are doing that. But I know there's a few, but usually it's because the book's doing well anyhow, so it comes up on Audible's radar.
That book had 2,000 reviews. And one thing I did notice with the Audible deal of the day, those books generally have thousands of reviews. Yeah. So it's not something that you accidentally get. Oh, my book just came out. It's got 3 reviews and I got an Audible deal of the day. No, you're not going to.
Yeah. They've got some visibility on the success of that book already. And I think that's the crazy thing is when you see with some of these audiobooks, the number of reviews that they get and how quickly they hit.
Yeah. I mean, the Audible deal of the day around mine, one book had 56,000 reviews, and the next day the one had 18,000 reviews. And here's my little guy with only 2,000 reviews. Gee.
Yeah.
I mean, at our level, that is far and away my best reviewed book. But 2,000, and you look at these other 50, 60,000 reviews.
Yeah,
it's not a level playing field, but it's more level and better than anything we've had in the past.
Oh yeah, well, and this is something I talk about ad nauseum. It's like you're not in a marketplace where it's a level playing field. If you're going to want to cry about fairness in the author world, then you need to do something else. It's not.
Well, and the great balance is the fact that if you're trad and that book that got 56,000 reviews, of course, that's the big publisher, that's Penguin Random House. But what is that author getting? Are they getting 10 to 30%? Whereas I'm getting 70% on my book sales. I'm getting all those page reads. I'm getting stuff that they're not getting. And my revenue, because I've seen what some of the trad pub, the big names are making, and I'm making more. Even though I don't have 56,000 reviews, I am making more money because I don't publish a book every 2 years. And yes, that one book, great. They drive it. Amazon loves it. Everybody loves it. And okay, good. But as a business, putting my business hat back on, I'm doing great.
Yeah, and I think that while the market isn't equitable or however you want to term it, it is a power law curve market. That shouldn't discourage anybody. If you're really serious about doing it, you've got a better shot now than you've ever had in the history of publishing. And you look at my client list, and last time I did a calculation, which was around the time of 20 books, is those people were responsible for $16 million worth of book sales. Okay. Nobody there is, there's a couple that have traditional deals, but like they didn't start as trad. Most people are, indie and have kind of gone into trad because they've shown that they should be getting those kind of deals. But the reality of it is that none of them are like, oh, I'm going to go get my MFA and become a literary writer. They're all people that started writing because they love to write or love to read, and just kind of came out of their own passion, and at some point they said, okay, I'm going to get really serious about this. So that's the cool thing is it hard to get to that level? Absolutely. Right. Anybody can play tennis, right? Few people get to play in the US Open.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, you don't need to play in the U.S. Open to make good money. And those few people who are making what the winner makes, but you look at those people like the PGA Tour. My cousin is on the PGA Tour, and he does very well. His name's Troy Merritt, and I think he's at 1.5, 1.8 million earned this year already. So he's having a great year. He's up there in the money. I think he's number 30 some overall in the FedEx Cup, but he's 36, 37 years old, and he made the tour and got his card back almost every year. He lost it for a little while, and when he wasn't making the cut, you make no money when you don't make the cut. So they're struggling week in, week out, and now as an indie, even if I have a book that doesn't make the cut, I'm doing fine because we control our overending. I mean, hey, if you're not making money, you don't travel, you don't do expensive ad campaigns, you don't do things that cost until you reestablish and have a winner, and then you start reinvesting. Like you said, if audiobook isn't doing it for you, but translations are, then you shift your money over here. And if you spend wisely, you can make the cut every week. And all of a sudden, you got great money coming in.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the things that I talk about a lot that may be the hardest for some folks to really get their head around is like, if you cut some of your expenses, and everybody I've looked at, the single biggest expense has always been advertising, right? If you cut your expenses, and specifically advertising, by 50%, in very few occasions have I ever seen it where your sales drop by 50%.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe they drop 20%, but you become 2 or 3 more times more profitable. Right. And now you're positive cash flow. And that's the one single resource that is going to be giving you advantage in future rounds. Right. If you have cash accumulating, you can spend it in future rounds and get better book covers, get better narrators, get translations, right? Like that's what gets that flywheel spinning. If you're cash negative, unless you're, got another source to invest in that business, eventually you're going to run out of money and you're out. It's a game of Monopoly. Can you pay the rent?
Yeah.
You can't. Can you mortgage your properties? No, I can't. Okay, give me all your shit. You're out.
Yeah, that's the game of life as a whole. If you're doing this as a hobby or on the side, then yes, you can manage it, and then there's no rush. No rush as relative, because everybody needs revenue at a certain point. Everybody needs money to live. So if this is a possible revenue stream, then take it seriously. If your possible revenue stream is you keep writing passion projects, then you're going to have problems because you're investing this time, and time is a finite resource. You're investing your time. Even if you're doing your own covers, you're doing everything else yourself, and you're publishing. So your cost is only your time, but if you're not making any money on it, when you could be making money on something else, then you've got to find what works. And learning, because this is a business, if you're getting into it as an entrepreneur, then learning is part of that business. To be a professional, you need to improve your game and keep paying attention and do better and better on the business side and understand you don't have to love the business like me and Joe. We love cash flow. I mean, we love the business side. You don't have to love it. You just have to understand it and manage it. And a very, very simple element of that is audiobook is costing me and I'm not getting my money back, and narrations are costing, or translations are costing me, but I'm getting my money back. Well, let me do more of this. That's a very simple example of managing your business, or ads. hey, you watch your ads. Don't just let them run and spend all your money and then all of a sudden you're out. Like paid promotions on a first book. I watch those, but I always get my money back, even if it's not right away and on that first book, because I'm doing the first book in a series, because series are much more inclined to make money than standalones. So if you have a standalone, you've got to advertise it, and then you've got to make your money back on that one book. There's no read through element to help you get your ROI, return on investment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's part of the thing that's hard for a lot of folks is understanding that it's going to be a long-term game. And the other one is going to things like 20 books and playing a mind game with yourself where you're comparing yourself to the people on the stage and not comparing yourself to the people in the audience. And what I mean by that is understanding is that, yes, Craig is going to have people that are top performers to be inspirational and to help share their wisdom, but that they're a very small percentage of the market. You can get there, but like last year you had, Elena Johnson speaking there, and I think she even mentioned it that how she got inspired by sitting in that audience, right? And you look at her career, if that's your first 20 books and you're watching that, you think that she just magically appeared and this all happened. It's like, no, she's been writing for 12 years, right?
She's got 180 books.
Yeah. And a lot of them don't do as well as another portion of them, right? And she had to write those, don't take this the wrong way, but the crappier books to get to the good ones, right? That's one of the cool things about this is you kind of learn on the job. Like that's the other part of continuing to write is you can get people to pay for you while you're learning on the job.
Yeah.
I know a lot of us want to put out the perfect book, but it's like, put out the best book you can now, learn from that, make the next one better. Eventually, like everybody's I've looked at, and I've looked at a lot of authors and titles, the ones that have like gone up exponentially, there's usually a series that becomes this function that changes their whole business. And if you go back and look at the series before that, yes, there's some lift. People do come back into those series and read them, but never at the level of these other series. It's like logarithmic, right? And it's like, well, why is that? Well, when they go back and read those books, they're like, something's off here. It's like, yeah, because that's not the same writer.
Yeah.
That was early Craig.
You're better.
He wrote as good as he could then. But now this is new, improved, and this is really what you like, and it's moving forward. And I think that a lot of authors, justifiably so, are like, well, I'm never going to go back to those books, right? They're great, understood. They'll never be as good as this other stuff you've done, and that's okay. But understand they're almost like two different writers, and this writer needed this writer to become, right? So, and that's a function of time, which the industry doesn't really talk about a whole lot, right? It's just like, oh no, it's going to be magical. You'll just become a best-selling author. No, sorry.
Nope. And never believe an ad that says, hey, you haven't written a book before? Well, we'll help you, and we'll help you write a bestseller right out of the gate.
Yeah.
No.
Every one of those you see, go ask the guy about his book and then go look it up on Amazon. It will most likely be well below 100,000 in the store, which means he's selling less than a book a day.
Yeah, no, not doing that.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, it's been great having you on. I'm sure we'll talk before, but can't wait to see you in sunny Spain.
Oh, you bet. Madrid, it's coming up.
Yeah.
All right, man. Always great talking with you, Joe. Appreciate it.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.